Marjorie Taylor Greene's not fit for office, and I'm going to make the case, and Buzz is going to fight me on it coming up. Peach Pundit, the podcast, is a conversation filled with the personal opinions of the people who are participating. Any view or opinion expressed belongs only to the person who expressed it and not with anyone with whom that person is professionally affiliated. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very special Constitution Day episode 2025 of Peach Pundit, the podcast. Just listen to that patriotism. Listen to it. So glad to have you all here with us this evening, wherever you are, whether it's the day, the morning, middle of the night, or you're taking that long walk with the dog and this is what you're listening to. We appreciate you. My name is Scott Turner, joined by the effervescent Buzz Brockway. Buzz, how are you?
I'm good, Scott. I'm good.
So,
college football is back. My team is winning.
I was going to ask you about the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets over there. Yeah. Y'all tore down the goalposts for a win over some team from South Carolina. What are you guys doing?
Well, the kings of the ACC. I mean, who has dominated the ACC over the last 10 years? The Clemson Tigers.
I would say
and
ESPN.
So.
Has dominated the ACC, but that's just me because they don't want the ACC to be good at all.
As is tradition, when goalposts are torn down, they are marched across campus and tossed in the pool that is on the president's backyard.
So I had a question about that because I saw the video of these kids. And I mean, you couldn't find a finer group of nerds to carry out goalposts.
Yeah,
one of them had a suit jacket on. I mean,
yeah.
So
those are frats. The frats all do that, right?
Right. So, but they tossed it. It looked like a
even
black
at
water
Auburn,
pond.
They do that. Yeah,
it didn't look like
a
pool.
Natural pool. Yes, one of those natural pools.
Oh, so it's not a swimming pool.
I don't know. I'd have to ask Dr. Cabrera if he swims it in or not. But it's.
I don't think I would want to swim in that water. That's what I was going to ask you. It looked black. It looked like there could be alligators in there.
Yeah, I've been there and got in legally. I did not sneak in during my college days and swim in the president's pool. But I have been in that backyard there for receptions and whatnot. And that's the first time I've seen it black. But I've known people who have had like natural saltwater pools, and they don't look like regular pools. So I don't know.
Well, my subdivision has a saltwater pool, and I can tell you it doesn't look black.
No.
Maybe it was just not lit or what, but at any rate, congrats to Georgia Tech for their season-defining win that now ESPN is saying means nothing because Clemson's only 1-2. So
right, yeah. Somehow Oh gosh, Scott, you could. LSU beats Clemson in Death Valley. It was a great game, tight game, close game. That is hailed as a fantastic win. And when people make the case as to why LSU should be number one, which a number of AP voters do, they point to that game. Well, they went to Death Valley and beat Clemson. When they refused to put Georgia Tech now number 18 in the AP poll. But there are voters who don't have them in their top 25 at all. And then, of course, Heather Dinich. Oh gosh, we could do a whole show on her. She's LSU could lose 2 or 3 more games and still be in the playoffs. Georgia Tech, if they win out,
that's
not sure because they're only good. All they've done is beat teams that are 1-2.
ESPN is nothing more than a propaganda machine for the SEC because they have a business relationship.
Yeah, but that's what's crazy though, because they have a business relationship with the ACC too, and the ACC network is wildly successful. They talk about it all the time about how much money it makes for ESPN and yada yada yada. But part of the problem is Tech is not viewed as one of the college sports blue bloods. LSU is. All these other people are, and here comes Tech and Vandy crashing the party. I mean, Vandy's had an impressive season, right? So far, they went into South Carolina and just throttled the 13th ranked Gamecocks or whatever, 11th ranked, whatever they were.
Yeah, And we have some Vandy grads who listen and sometimes participate and contribute at Peach Pundit who are over the moon at how well they're doing.
Yeah, that's why I'm predicting a Vandy Georgia Tech national championship. I mean, there's no stopping it. First time since 1984 that both teams have been ranked at the same time. It's going to happen.
I think that's as likely as a Brad Raffensperger versus Jeff Duncan matchup for governor on the general election ballot, which we're going to get into in a second, just to show you that college football is definitely just as political as Georgia politics is political. We have a lot to discuss, and we're going to talk about Brad Raffensperger and Jeff Duncan coming up, along with Fani Willis and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And we have some new polling data from Quantas on the U.S. Senate race we want to share with you, as well as, it's been a week since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and it happened just a couple hours before we recorded our last session, and we hadn't really had any time to develop our thoughts and collect ourselves, and it was sort of an emotional, and it was raw at the moment, but we've had a week, so we want to try to reflect on what we've seen, what we've learned, what we know about ourselves even, and also, if we have time, we'll talk about Pam Bondi and her lack of knowledge of how the Constitution works, I think. Well, maybe if we get time for that. It's a packed agenda. In the meantime, sit back, relax. Here's a quick break.
Peach Pundit has an anonymous Patreon who would like to invite you to learn more about the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. No one should fight Alzheimer's alone. With your help, no one will. Learn more on their website, alz.org.
Golden Retriever Rescue of Atlanta, GRRA, is an all-volunteer, tax-deductible charitable organization. They are dedicated to providing veterinary care, comprehensive evaluation, and foster and adoptive homes to Golden and Labrador Retrievers who are abandoned, mistreated, neglected, or left in shelters throughout Georgia. We encourage you to visit their website grra.com and help connect people and dogs that need each other in their lives. You truly can make this world a better place by helping find homes of gold for these golden-hearted pups.
Those messages are brought to you by our Patreons. If you would like to join our Patrons, our tiers start for as little as $5 per month. You just head on over to patreon.com/peachpundit, sign up. We'll add you to the list of people who rock. We do have a merch giveaway that is ongoing. I will go ahead and announce the newest winner is Lawton Sack. Lawton Sack has commented several times on several different posts, so he got several entries. And he was able to go ahead and win I guess I'll make it a t-shirt this time. So Lawton, direct message me your shipping address and we'll make sure you get your t-shirt. Oh, look, he's in the chat. Woohoo, and go Jackets, he says. He's in the chat.
Yes,
so at our $10 level, you do get to join us backstage. For those who were there, they got some extra content today. Things that we can't talk about on the podcast, but they get to enjoy that. So again, patreon.com/peachpundit. Congratulations, Lawton, on winning the shirt. If you want to get into the merch giveaway, all you have to do is go to YouTube or to wherever you listen, whether it's Amazon or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get the podcast, make a comment there. If we'll see it, we'll add you to the next giveaway. So over the last couple of days, we've had some movement in the governor's race here in Georgia, specifically on the Republican side, where we saw two candidates throw their name in the ring. And I'm going to start with the one that I have no idea who this person is, a guy named Clark Dean. What do you know about Clark?
Not much.
Right.
I looked up his LinkedIn profile. He's the executive managing director and partner and board member at a company called Transwestern.
Any company with the name trans in it is a downer for Republican primaries. I'm just saying.
So he's a Transwestern Sciences Group, which serves clients across asset classes and service lines.
That's big corporate speak for something really important, I'm sure.
Yes. I have no idea what that means, but he's a Harvard guy that appears to be one of the founders of this organization, looking at people who are already connected with him that I know, who are already connected with him on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of heavy hitters. So he knows folks, and will they rally his campaign? I don't know, but he knows a lot of people. So he's obviously been in and around the business community for a while here in Georgia and Atlanta.
So it profiles to be similar to the Clay Tippins race from 8 years ago. And I was not impressed with all the other candidates at the time. Forgive me, Brian Kemp, for saying that, but I was not on Team Kemp when Team Kemp rolled out their gubernatorial campaign. And the governor and I obviously have allowed that to be bygones since then. But I was behind a guy named Clay Tippins because he was a business guy, because he was somebody, he actually came to see me in my legislative office, and he was willing to be educated on things he had no idea about. And he immediately got some of the issues that I pitched to him as things like civil asset forfeiture. And he just continually contacted me, and we struck up a relationship, and I went with him. Right. So it profiles similarly to me, but even though he was willing to put a lot of his own money and he had a network of donors that could put a lot of money into the race, you can't overcome name ID like Burt Jones, who is a lieutenant governor and has a record to run on, right? It's really tough for these types of candidates to make any type of traction.
Sure. The two, now three folks in the race have already been elected statewide multiple times. Burt Jones only once, right? He hadn't won for re-election, but he's, so yeah, you got to spend a whole lot of money to get your name ID up to where the other candidates in the race are. And he might be able to do that. We'll see. Who knows how I saw Lieutenant Governor Jones has already released an ad the moments after the other guy who jumped in the race that we'll talk about here in a second, and pronounced them using President Trump's words for those other guys, Chris Carr and our Secretary of State. They are rhinos in the estimation of the president. So.
Right. So let's get into that then, because the other obviously bigger name that announced today is Brad Raffensperger. Not really surprising us at this point, because
there was a little bit of a head fake that I posted about. I don't know that it came from him, but I found it interesting. I posted it on Peach Pundit that I got one of those text polls, and it mentioned a list of people running for Senate and all of all the candidates who are actually in the race, and mixed in there was Brad Raffensperger. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know if it was the Raffensperger team who was behind that. It was just one last check before they jump in the governor's race. I don't know, but a little bit of a head fake there by somebody. And now Brad's where we thought he was, where it seemed to be trending for a while that he was going to run for governor, right?
Right. So last year I started this effort to sort of convince him to try to get into the Senate. And unbeknownst to me at the time, there were other people who had also approached him. And I thought it was good for a couple different reasons. Number one, him as a Senate candidate would have taken the heat off of that office from the LG during legislative session. And that was like the primary driver. I thought, we can get the lieutenant governor to pay attention to other things rather than just picking on the elections thing all the time. And there were serious discussions. I would come to learn later. I had just made it up, basically. And I would come to learn later that there had been folks who had approached him that were very serious with national networks trying to convince him that U.S. Senate was the thing. But throughout this year, it's become more obvious, just the small tells here and there. There were some fundraising efforts by his former staff for a state PAC, as an example. And he was actually making calls on behalf of that PAC. And it didn't seem like you would use a state PAC to fund a federal campaign. So there were other signs that this was coming, and it finally arrived. We're about a year from when Chris Carr announced originally,
right?
Not far from a year since he's been running for a long time. But let's talk about the lanes of these different candidates, because you mentioned the Burt Jones ad that went out live immediately upon Brad Raffensperger. So they had this thing ready to go. They were expecting this to happen at any moment. So it was a really highly produced ad with a high production value. And it does intersperse Donald Trump's own words, along with it looks like cell phone video of the president with Burt, and like the presidential limo saying things, and J.D. Vance giving him shout outs. So we know, and the message was that Burt Jones has always been with Trump, and he labels Carr and Raffensperger as never Trump guys, saying they turned their back on him. And Burt Jones, if you're MAGA, this is your guy. And Burt Jones has obviously been endorsed by the president. Yeah. So let's talk about, tell me what your perspective is on how you see the lanes shaking out. What are the paths to victory for each of these candidates at this point?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I think it's unfair, in all due respect to the lieutenant governor, to label these guys never Trumpers. Trump's and MAGA's anger with Chris Carr, for example, is because he didn't go and, absent evidence, round up people and arrest them and prosecute them for election fraud, because there wasn't any that could reach the attorney general's desk, right? That's not how our process works, right? So,
at least the Constitution would have us believe.
Yes, one would think. And then, of course, all anger is focused on Brad Raffensperger. But Scott, you and I know Brad Raffensperger was one of the first guys, maybe the first one or two guys that I knew who was actually supporting Donald Trump in the primary back when in 2015.
People forget he's the first elected official in Georgia to endorse him, and then Steve Tarvin, 1-2, bang bang. Yeah. And we all thought Brad Raffensperger and Steve Tarvin were crazy back then, by the way.
Yes,
and we were wrong.
Right?
They were on. They were. Those two guys were way more in touch with the feeling of angst in the American electorate.
Yeah,
well better than I was, for sure.
Now, look, to be sure, Raffensperger and Trump locked horns in the aftermath of the 2020 election.
Yeah, there's the phone call.
No doubt about it. But it would be a grave mistake. I wrote in the little Peach Pundit post about Raffensperger announcing there's a loud group of people who want to relitigate the 2020 election. They've got their guy in the Secretary of State's race in the person of Kelvin King, and they would love, I'm sure, to take down Brad Raffensperger. It would be a huge mistake of Burt Jones to let those people drive the narrative for his camp, for the governor's race too. I would not shock me at all if 2020 consumes the Secretary of State's race, because you got Gabe Sterling in there, of course, worked for Brad Raffensperger during that time period, right? So I think it'd be a huge mistake. But look, he's obviously, Burt Jones starts with the MAGA people firmly united behind him. That helps for sure. That no doubt that helps. That doesn't cinch the race, right? He's got to do the work, and he's got to stand on his own 2 feet. And he did when he ran for lieutenant governor the first time, right? He stood on his own record. Here's what I did as a senator. Here's what I want to do. He's got a record to point to. Here's the things I've done as lieutenant governor. Chris Carr, I think the Isaacson connection, Chris knows a lot of people in the state of Georgia, a lot of people. He has been around Georgia politics for a long, long time, and he has a lot of friendships. And I think he's going to obviously tout the things he's done to fight gangs and fight human trafficking as Attorney General. He's going to point to his time when he was under Governor Deal, the director of the Department of Economic Development, and bringing jobs to the state of Georgia. He's going to talk about that stuff. And Brad, I think Secretary Raffensperger rather, I think he's going to appeal to that business community as well, emphasizing a couple of things. One, I'm my own man. I'm not afraid to stand up for what I believe in. And stand strong in the face of hurricane force winds. And I think he's going to tout the other aspects of the Secretary of State's job, which has to do with licensure, putting people to work, getting people to work, assisting the business community and the technical paperwork aspects of their job. So I think, probably it shapes out as, my guess is that of the Republican primary voters who are hardcore MAGA, maybe in the 25-30% range, right? So let's say Burt Jones attracts 90% of those people, right? So that puts in, let's say, a 27% right off the bat. Then the fight is over the 63%, 73% rather, of the rest of the primary voters. And I think the danger for Raffensperger and Carr will be is that they can, if they're not careful, appeal to the same constituencies and fight over those. Yep. And you've got Burt Jones in the lead, and then which one of them is going to be in second place. Now, and as I mentioned, I think the danger for Burt Jones here, the trap that's set there for him by the folks who want to relitigate 2020 is that all he does is attack Brad Raffensperger over 2020, and they lock horns over the years on that front. If he lets it consume his campaign, then I think that shifts things in the favor of Brad Raffensperger and Chris Carr.
Something else about that I want to point out. Brad Raffensperger was Secretary of State. His budget and how he was effective at running his office depended upon the legislature, which Burt had basically veto control over things that were affecting that office.
As lieutenant governor, yes.
So as Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger had to be reserved. He had to be polite. He had to be diplomatic. He no longer is bound by that. So the fact that you've been picking on him for 3 years and he hasn't really been swinging back, I know his campaign manager or consultant that's running that campaign, she is not going to allow that to continue unanswered.
She's a back alley brawler.
She is. She'll cut you. She will. She's got a backbone of steel. She does not care what people think. If something negative happens, she's going to cut you. Yeah. And you've drawn first blood. You've given that campaign everything they need to turn it around on you. I will also say this, though. I think that if Chris Carr and Brad Raffensperger both stay in, that the probability of Burt Jones winning without a runoff is significantly higher than if two of them decide to drop out. And I don't think either one of them will. I'm just saying that the probability, the point that you made just now about them cannibalizing each other's voting base, and I, from my perspective, that's a much smaller portion of the Republican primary electorate than what Burt is playing with as a starting point. Mm-hmm. I think that if they both are doing that, it's possible. There's a greater probability that Burt Jones wins without runoff.
Well, I think what one of them or both of them will try to do is say, well, Burt is lieutenant governor's a one-trick pony. He sings Trump's tune. How does that apply to the state of Georgia? God bless Donald Trump. He's up there in D.C. fighting for us, but we've got to take care of business here in Georgia. And all he knows how to do is, this is what they might say. Yeah. All Lieutenant Governor knows how to do is take cues from Trump. Whereas both of those gentlemen have been leading their own departments. They're constitutional officers as well. Yeah. So I don't know. It's got to be, this coupled with the Secretary of State's race is just going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating how these people, these candidates jockey for position and try to earn a spot in the runoff.
Right. And we haven't even gotten to the Democrats because they also made news this week because that longtime liberal progressive Jeff Duncan announced that he is running. And look, I've said it has to be repeated every time. I don't want to talk about Jeff Duncan anymore. I don't want to. But Jeff has decided, as we predicted, to run for governor as a Democrat. Now, look, Buzz in a group chat was the first one to point this out to me, but I'm running with it. The probability of a Raffensperger-Duncan general election is pretty small, considering all things considered. But
it's greater than zero.
Isn't it fun to think about, though? Like, could you imagine?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think back, I in my little post, I wrote how I saw that Secretary Raffensperger a couple of weeks ago, before he announced he would not reveal to me, he would not tip his hand as to what he was going to do. But we laughed about the possibility of a Jeff Duncan as a Democrat, Brad Raffensperger as a Republican general election for governor.
What does Donald Trump do?
None of us would have predicted that as we were all sitting around eating a lunch with our colleagues and pals in the Sloppy Floyd, all those.
Did Jeff Duncan ever stay long enough to have lunch with us?
Sure, of course.
Because I remember him.
Where do you think the Jeff Duncan versus Kevin Cook baseball duel was hatched. It was in Sloppy Floyd.
I remember that differently. I thought I was there for that, and it was in 401.
I was sitting right there when it happened.
Well, okay.
They started going back and forth, and one of them says, "You want to put some money on it?" And the next thing you know, it's like $10,000. We're like, whoa, guys, hang on here, man.
I never
you're both competitive, but
Buzz just broke some news. I never said how much the bet was for. Buzz just told the audience.
I think that we talked him into backing it off.
No, you didn't, because Kevin Cook is still salty that he didn't get his $10,000. He wanted to build a new chicken barn or something with that money. Yeah, but yeah,
no,
I didn't tell. It was Buzz.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here we go.
Oh my gosh. Well, good news for Burt Jones. Well, Burt Jones was already the beneficiary of the court's ruling that Fani Willis could not prosecute him, but the state Supreme Court gave us a ruling this week saying that Fani Willis can't prosecute anybody related to
she's out of here.
The 2020 election.
Yeah.
Something that is probably for the best, to be honest, for everybody involved, including her, because she has shown a true, not only just a lack of judgment, but her office doesn't seem like it could actually prosecute a ham sandwich.
Well,
especially with these more complicated cases.
Just ask the YSL.
Right. At Young Thug, isn't that the guy she tried to send away for multiple life sentences?
The young Slime Life.
YSL trial, which was similar in the charges and the schemes. It was a RICO case, essentially. And she's brought these charges against the folks who I call them alternate electors. I'll refer to them as the alternate electors. If Jason Pye were here, he would call them fake electors. But
criminal electors.
These people were convinced by attorneys that their actions were needed in order to secure legal standing for a situation that may unfold later. They were not actually acting with the knowledge that they were, in fact, the electors that were legitimately elected. But they were brought together by David Schaefer, who was chairman of the party, to preserve a legal challenge. And what's interesting is, a part of this research, I texted Pete Skandalakis to see if they had a statement on Fani Willis being tossed, and he did. But it also led me to go back and read his full report on why he chose not to prosecute Burt Jones, because in that case, Burt was being targeted by Fani. Fani had given money to his political opponent in Charlie Bailey. And so the court said, you can't prosecute somebody, you have a conflict of interest. And then the prosecuting attorney's counsel had to go and try to find somebody. They could not find anybody willing to prosecute the lieutenant governor. Surprise, surprise. And then it fell on Pete as head of prosecuting attorney's counsel to make the decision on whether or not he would prosecute the case. And he issued this really long report, and he goes into detail about the behavior and actions of Burt Jones. And he talks about how Burt didn't want to be there. He was begged to be there. There were other people who corroborated that. And based on his investigation, there was not enough to prosecute. Now, that really ticked off Fani Willis and the people on the left who wanted to see people behind bars over what happened in Georgia. But Buzz, you've said this for a long time. Now we know that the case will go to PAC. They will try again, just like they did with Burt Jones, find an alternative prosecutor. And if they can't, it'll be on Pete. And we know that one of the possibilities for the outcome on this is Pete just says no. But you've said this for a long time, that if they narrow the case in scope from this big sprawling octopus of a RICO case to just like what was happening in Coffee County with this lady giving away the voting machine technology.
Right.
There might be something there.
Right. There was ever only two questions that needed to be answered. And I'm not an attorney. I don't know if these things meet the threshold of a crime that should be prosecuted. Yeah. As you mentioned, Scott, the Coffee County fiasco where Kraken lady Sidney Powell's people went down there and
they stole election equipment.
They stole the source code. That never seems to get brought up by the folks who are concerned about election security, that one of their own actually went and stole the source code. That never seems to bother them.
Right.
But the other one, of course, being, did Donald Trump's call to Brad Raffensperger, where he wanted him to, quote unquote, find him the necessary votes. Did that cross the line? And I don't know. I mean, Trump's always very vague, and Trump is, in those situations throughout his public life, Trump has always been very vague so it may not be prosecutable. But I sure want some smart prosecutor looking at the Coffee County thing, because that just grinds my gears.
No, look, this is the last thing. This is my closing word on this particular topic, and that is, I'm just spitballing here, right? Some competent prosecutor out there, maybe with a little bit of political ambition, decides, Pete, give me the case, and they dismiss it by this coming Wednesday, and we can all get back to preparing for the UGA Alabama game in Athens this weekend. A man can dream. We're going to come back and tell you more about Marjorie Taylor Greene and some polling data. So stay tuned. Americans for Prosperity Georgia champions economic freedom and individual liberty across the state. They advocate for lower taxes, less government spending, and regulatory reform while mobilizing citizens to engage in the legislative process. Beyond economic issues, AFP Georgia is committed to more choice in K-12 education for all students and removing government barriers in healthcare, like Certificate of Need. If you'd like to learn more about our friends at Americans for Prosperity, head on over to ga.americansforprosperity.org. They have a great series of events called the Peach State Playbook, where they're sitting with legislators, whether it's a state senator or state reps in their own districts, talking about these types of economic issues that they advocate for. Check them out. Again, that's ga.americansforprosperity.org. Thank you again to our friends at Americans for Prosperity for being a partner-level Patreon.
Conservatives Concerned is a network of political and social conservatives who question the alignment of capital punishment with conservative principles and values. Our programs include educating conservatives about the failed death penalty system and mobilizing them to bring about its end. We come to this issue for a variety of reasons. Some believe that small government and the death penalty don't go together, especially when we compare the high costs of capital punishment to life without possibility of release. Some don't trust the state to get it right. We already know that some innocent people have been sentenced to death, and for others, it may already be too late. Some believe that the death penalty contradicts our values about protecting life. Find out more at conservativesconcerned.org.
One of the great things that makes our country so incredibly awesome is that we're diverse. And I don't mean that in the DEI sense. What I mean by that is we live in Georgia. We like fried chicken. We like our barbecue with a certain style sauce. We have cultural traditions and norms that are different than somebody you might find in California. We love college football here. If you were in Philadelphia, it's Eagles or nothing, man. Right? And this is America. We have that freedom to make mistakes like Eagles fans do. Sorry, Leo. I know that's a shot. But the point of that is, what makes it great is that if you don't feel at home amongst the people you live with, you're probably going to be able to find others somewhere else. The climate might be a little different, right? Not everybody can have the weather of San Diego, California. And you might get pollen in the springtime, but at least you have liberty. And that's one of the things that makes America great. You don't have to stay where you are. You are free to get up and move. I've had this happen in the own county that I live in. I've seen really rich people in the county that I live in refuse to pay another penny in property tax because they feel like the county's being mismanaged. And they get up and they move to Pickens. Mm-hmm. Not that that's any better up there, but to each their own. Yeah. They make their own decisions and they're free to do so. And I set this up. This is all to set up to put some sunshine on Marjorie Taylor Greene continuing to show why she is not up for this moment in American history. And I'm not going to relitigate all the QAnon conspiracy theory BS that she spewed before she got elected. And now she's just acting like she's upset because Donald Trump didn't want her to run for one of these offices that she thought she was more qualified. She's not more qualified. I think the candidates that we have are awesome. She's not impressed by them because their name's not Marjorie. The only candidate that Marjorie Taylor Greene would ever be impressed by is Donald Trump, number one, and very close behind Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's it. She doesn't like anybody else. She fights with everybody else. And now, Buzz, she's calling for, well, again, because she's done this in the past, she's renewed her calls for a national divorce.
Yep.
My question to you is, one, what the hell is a national divorce? Are we talking civil war? What does that look like?
I don't think she means civil war, because she said a peaceful national divorce.
What the hell?
I mean, there's no serious plan out there to do this. And you've seen this before. I remember, what was that filmmaker, Michael
Myers?
Anyway, yeah, Michael Myers. Yeah, the documentary maker. He wanted two countries, essentially California, the West Coast, and the Northeast, and then the rest he labeled Jesus land, and you guys can all go to hell. So, it's, there have been people wanting this for a while. Not seriously, though. And I don't know that she's serious, because there's no plan. There's no legal mechanism to make that happen, because that question was settled during the Civil War of the 1860s, right? The southern states, 13 Confederate states, tried to leave
peacefully,
foreshadowing college sports conference realignment, and they were going to form their own country. And Abraham Lincoln said, "I don't think so."
Right.
So that's why we had a war. So there's no mechanism to make this happen. But Scott, to your point, people can move. There are studies that show that's happened in the United States of America. The people move out of
California,
out of Democratic areas into Republican areas, and vice versa. That even gets granular down to neighborhoods. When people find that their neighborhood, their cul-de-sac leans one way or the other, then they don't like it, they leave. So, I mean, this pulling apart, this separation has been happening for a long time in this country. It's not good. And yeah, I agree with you, Scott. It's totally irresponsible. She's doing it in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination. And that's her response, is there needs to be a peaceful national divorce. So I don't think she means civil war. That's what would happen if anybody tried to do something like that.
But Marjorie, there are Democrats who live in Georgia. So who gets what part of Georgia? It just doesn't make any sense, right? It's she's not a serious-minded person. She buys into all these conspiracy theory nonsense, and she thinks that it's people are the problem, and that our neighbors, I'm going to borrow a phrase from Yuval Levin, that our neighbors are the problem to be solved.
Yeah.
And I am so sorry, but if you have given up on America, get the hell out of Congress.
Yeah.
Get the hell out. Go find something else to do. If you think you can win, it's not too late to declare your candidacy for governor of Georgia. If you think you can win.
If you're saying needs to be a national divorce, you're saying there's no political solution to this.
Right.
So why be an elected official at all?
It is defeatist, and you've given up on us.
Yeah.
You've given up on all of us, that we can't live together. Like, at a certain point, you just pull the plug when it gets hard. I don't understand the mindset of, when it gets hard, let's just walk away.
Yeah.
You have an opportunity. You have a microphone. You have a platform. You have the opportunity to lead, and you are failing the moment. You need to get out of office, or you need to be beat. And I hope that the folks of the 14th Congressional District in Georgia find somebody that is actually believes in America. Because this lady does not, and she continues to show us every opportunity she has that she's lost faith in us, all of us.
Yeah, and you mentioned Yuval Levin, and I've mentioned it before on this podcast. He writes a book, a great book, the answer to this moment is leaning into the Constitution. Yes. Yeah, there's another. He has two of them there. American Covenant's the most recent one. The one I'm talking about, A Time to Build, is another fantastic book. They should be must reading for every listener of the Peach Pundit podcast, Republican or Democrat, right? Because A Time to Build talks about what Marjorie Taylor Greene and all the members of Congress should be doing, which is strengthening the institution of the Congress, doing their job, clawing back their constitutional job as described in the Constitution to oversee the bureaucracy and to rein in the president, even a president of your own party. I mean, good grief. And of course, the National Covenant book is just a fantastic book about, Yuval makes the great point that our Constitution distributes power. It's never permanent because there's always another election coming up in 2 years in the case of the Congress, and 4 years in the case of the president, and 6 years in the case of the Senate. And if those people who are in those offices are not doing what you want, you can boot them out and put in other people. So we need to lean into that. That's the place where these national disputes need to be hammered out, not by picking up a rifle and not by calling for a national divorce. So you're right on. And this is why it's so important who you elect to these kind of offices, because they need to be people who are committed. They all take an oath to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States of America. And they're not defending it. And by calling for a national divorce, you're not defending the Constitution.
It's the
of the United States of
opposite of defending it. You
wanted to rip it to shreds.
You are
right. You want
attacking
to rip
the
it to shreds.
Constitution.
We're going to rip it to shreds, and we're going to start over with something else. And that's just dumb.
Look, we have a whole category at Peach Pundit called Stupid Things Marjorie Taylor Greene Does. And it's filled with stories just like this.
Yeah. She's also inserted herself. This is kind of disgusting. Since Charlie Kirk passed away, obviously we saw horrific comments by social media on self-identified leftists. For the most part, I don't know, maybe a state representative here or there. No national Democrat that I saw did anything other than mourn and be sad about Charlie Kirk's death.
Not to say that there aren't Democrats out there who did.
Yeah. Oh, sure. There are. I saw
Buzz has
a couple state representatives. I saw a couple state representatives from places like California. Whatever. Go pound sand. But on the right, there's been this effort, and Marjorie Taylor Greene jumped right in the middle of this today, by Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens to rewrite Charlie Kirk's legacy into one of being anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. And Marjorie Taylor Greene just jumped right in the middle of that.
Because she's anti-Semitic.
Yeah. And I'm not going to, there's no sense in hashing through all this.
All right.
It's all lies. What they're trying to do is say that Charlie Kirk said things in private in the last few weeks that he never said in public.
Right.
In fact, he said things that were the polar opposite of what Carlson and Candace Owens and now Marjorie Taylor Greene are saying he said. And I think I want to I'll make one last point here, Scott, and then let you weigh in. But Seth Mandel in Commentary Magazine wrote this afternoon, he's scratching his head as to why are they doing this? And he points to, and I think he's right on, Kirk proved that his model of political organizing was superior to anything else on the right, and especially anything else that Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or Marjorie Taylor Greene has come up with. And his model is pro-Israel and opposed to anti-Semitism. Kirk was explicit about that.
And had fired staffers, because I remember Pi writing about the problem at TPUSA is that they have these anti-Semites on their staff, and those people were fired. And he dealt with that, right?
Yes. And so Kirk showed folks that you don't have to embrace what Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson have embraced, and for whatever reason they're doing this. Quite frankly, the NatCons at their NatCon conference in Washington a couple weeks ago were talking about how we shouldn't be pro-Israel. Well, guess what? And I think this is what galls them. And Charlie Kirk stood with the vast majority of MAGA people in support of Israel and in opposition to anti-Semitism. So it galls them. And it galls Marjorie Taylor Greene too, because Charlie Kirk succeeded well beyond
Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk succeeded well beyond what they did in their ability to organize young people for political ends.
Activism.
Yep.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene today on Twitter, she had some text messages with Charlie Kirk in the closing days of his life. Nobody knew, but he had invited Marjorie Taylor Greene to come and debate IPAC at AmFest, which is a big gathering that TPUSA puts on that brings people in. It's like CPAC, but the TPUSA version of it. And he had invited her, and she was pointing to that as evidence that he saw things the way that she did. But if you read the text messages, he goes, would you come and debate IPAC? Well, do whatever you want to do. You don't have to debate me.
Yeah.
The implication
would have
there
ripped her
is
to shreds.
Right.
Right.
The implication there is, I know you don't have the mental firepower to keep up with me, so I'll make it an even fight and give you like one of my junior staffers that'll destroy you too, because you make no sense. Right. But she's not smart enough to realize that's what he was saying is, please come. People here love you. You're wrong about this. So I want you to debate it so you can be heard, but have one of my people do it, not me, because he's well practiced. He would have destroyed her on this issue.
And that's in keeping with, I've learned more about Charlie Kirk and TPUSA in the last week than I had. It's sad to say. I knew who he was. I knew, essentially what their organization was about. But the videos that have been shared, that's kind of in keeping. Him inviting Marjorie Taylor Greene to come and debate this issue over Israeli involvement in American politics is kind of in keeping of what I've learned about him in life. He was not afraid to debate, and he was not scared of somebody standing up like MTG and expressing views that he himself might vehemently disagree with. He was not afraid of that. And he would let the facts determine what people came to believe. And so he was happy to have that debate at AmFest and let people decide for themselves what they think and make up their own minds. So again, you can agree with him or disagree with him. I don't agree with everything that he said that I have seen. There are things that I disagree with, and that's fine.
Charlie's organization was
right.
Yeah, Charlie's organization, TPUSA, was a machine at churning out stolen election claims. So when I said last week, I didn't always see eye to eye with him specifically about that, just to be clear. And since you've brought it up, this is now the time where we're going to reflect on what we've learned and seen in the last week. There is a serious concern that I have about nut picking. Are you familiar with this term?
Yes.
Nut picking. For those who, I have only recently learned it. So
yes,
I'm not talking down to the audience here. What I learned is that nut picking is the exercise of picking the most extreme examples of the other side and saying that's representative of all of them. So it would be equivalent of picking Marjorie Taylor Greene and saying that's all Republicans. We know that's not true, right?
And it's been a key part of political fundraising forever, right? That's why mail pieces for state house races in Georgia might have a picture of Nancy Pelosi on them.
Right. Right. Or a fake photo of a state house rep lifting the arm of Stacey Abrams. We've seen that.
Right.
We saw that in Forsyth County last year.
Yep.
But nut picking is something that happens, like Buzz said, all the time. And I've always been aware of the phenomenon. I just didn't realize that's what people called it. And I've seen a lot of that, but here's the problem. At what point does it stop being nut picking? And that's just the way people are on that side. And I want to get away from like my natural inclination. Like there are a couple of things that I posted. Number one was resist the urge to isolate.
Yes.
Because after Charlie got shot, my day job puts me in direct contact all the time with people who do not see eye to eye with me on politics. And I work in a political environment. We set aside our differences to focus on the areas of policy where we can agree on and try to work on those policies alone. And I think I might have mentioned this once before. For example, I've been working with this one lady for 3 years. She had no idea where I stood on the life issue because we just never brought it up because there was an unspoken agreement. We're going to focus on this issue because we agree on this. We're not going to focus on that. And eventually she worked up the courage to ask me about my take on the life issue. And I explained it to her. And she had never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
But it was a very respectful conversation. I, for the next 48 hours after that, I got to go sit with elected officials from around the Southeast. And it was so fresh, right? It had just happened the day before when we started this meeting in Charlotte. And it was on top of mind, right? We couldn't even start the gathering until we addressed it. It was the elephant in the room. And we started talking about, all of us were conservatives in that room. And our natural inclination was just to circle the wagons and be with each other. Mm-hmm. And that for me is the opposite of what we should be doing, but it's my natural instinct. I want to get away from people on the left who want to shoot people. I want to get away from talking with them. And it was, I'll be honest with you, over the weekend, it was no better because I saw somebody who I work with on a weekly basis, on a regular conference call with this guy, say that, the best rebrands in history, Kentucky Fried Chicken becomes KFC. The Young Men's Christian Association becomes the Y. Nazism and fascism gets rebranded as debate. And this is somebody I work with, right? And, it doesn't work in our organization, but is in the circles. And my response was, bad ideas are just ideas. And that's all I said, meaning they can't hurt you. And the best way to deal with them is somebody else comes along and says, now my comment was, bad ideas are just ideas. Their response was, spoken like the defense counsel at Nuremberg. I went to Nazis just like that.
Yeah.
Just like that. And I responded simply by saying, conflating debate for the Holocaust certainly captures the zeitgeist. I know in my heart of hearts, my brain, well, actually, I don't know in my heart of hearts. My brain tells me that not all people on the left are like this shooter in Utah. That not everybody celebrates the death of Charlie Kirk on the left. Like my brain tells me, like mathematically, it's impossible. But what we have seen, Buzz, over the last week, I don't know if it's just social media or if it's the media that's amplifying or nitpicking and just amplifying it, but it seems so incredibly widespread that these people actually believe that all of us on the right are Nazis, that we're all fascist. And that's what motivates us. And I'm not where Marjorie Taylor Greene is in giving up on the American people, but I also know that I can't isolate.
Yes.
I can't just be amongst conservatives. If I want to see the change in the world, I have to play a part in it. I can't be it by myself. I know that. But I can't just circle the wagons and just be with you. And it reminds me of scripture when Jesus told his followers, we're not going to hang out together for the rest of your life. You've got to go out now. And we can't just stay in our little tribe and think we're going to be okay with this. It's not the way it works. The world doesn't work that way. So that was my reflection on the last week. It's a struggle. And by the way, I'm not into the whole cancel culture thing. Me and that guy, we're probably never going to talk about what happened on Facebook. I'm not going to call his boss and tell him that was the interaction that we had. That's just not who I am. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that it will never not be in my mind whenever I'm working with that guy again, that this guy probably thinks I'm a Nazi.
Yeah, Scott, I've befriended a couple people on Facebook.
You don't do that either.
Because they were openly just mocking and laughing that Charlie Kirk is dead and had it coming. And he deserved it, and may he rot in hell, and I hope others do too. And I have tried as best I can to have a wide array of kinds of people that I've met over the years among my Facebook friends. Right, I'm close to 5,000 of them. I'm less now. And so one of them, I just said, listen, I'm goodbye. You'll never hear from me again. If you are celebrating a man's death because you didn't agree with his political views, then you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. You're part of the problem. goodbye. I've had to stay off of social media or focus only on sports Twitter, but it has been discouraging. And I know it's not, as I mentioned, many Democrats and people who consider themselves of the left were just as horrified about this as you and I are. They understand the consequences, the forces that this could unleash in our nation, and they're as worried about it as we are. But I do think, Scott, that there are things that our friends on the left have to address. This toxic online culture. It exists on the right too, and guys like you and I who are on our right, we have to address it too. But it's particularly at this moment, because Trump is in the White House, is particularly active on the left. And I mean, what we see, what we have learned about the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk, it's obvious. He wanted to kill Charlie Kirk because he thought he was a hater and evil because of his views toward what we know as his boyfriend, who was a man transitioning to a woman. They were involved in a romantic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's obvious. That's only all we know are the tip of the iceberg of what the prosecutors have. They entered that was listed in their indictment. The confession of the shooter. I'm not going to even mention his name. The shooter.
It was a letter that he'd written to his boyfriend / girlfriend / whatever.
Yep.
And there was a series of text messages where he explained why he did it.
Yes. But all right. So that is there. And the algorithms of social media. I think a lot of these people, I want to be kind and have them, a lot of these people get caught up in, well, everybody else is expressing hatred toward Charlie Kirk, so I will too, because that makes me feel comfortable because all of my friends are doing the same thing. And if you soak yourself and bathe yourself and marinate yourself in this kind of toxic culture that exists online, then when something like this happens, that's what you're going to say. And Scott, to your point about not isolating yourself, that's so important, because when you are just in this little bubble of just everybody who thinks like you and agrees like you and reacts to things the same way you do and comforts yourself with that you're right, you dehumanize the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, it's okay that Charlie Kirk is dead and killed by a sniper's bullet because he was a Nazi. And I watched one YouTuber, a guy named Metatron, who mostly does his history, examines his history. He was outraged by all this, and he played some of these videos of some of these online left-wing influencers and mocking and laughing. And then he said, and then he showed this other video that's been making the rounds that I don't know when it happened, but it wasn't that long ago. Charlie Kirk was Charlie Kirk was a...
Charlie Kirk didn't write the Cook political report.
No. And he's not a writer for National Review either. Charlie Kirk was on a Fox News program. His wife and kids were there. And the show ended. The segment ended. They were going to commercial or whatever. And Charlie Kirk's little daughter comes running over to see her dad, who, like all dads do, sweeps her up into his arms and hugs her. And Metatron was like, how can you watch that and say that it is okay to kill him? He was a father. He was a husband. If you can't look at that and say his murder was wrong, then you've lost your humanity. And that's what I fear, that too many people have marinated in this online culture, in their online bubbles where the other side is evil, that they can't even, that video, first of all, probably never penetrates their little bubble.
Right.
So you just, of course.
The algorithm's not going to show it to them.
Right. And so we've got to snap out of this. And I don't be too hard, because do these people really want somebody to die? If they put the gun in their hands, would they really be the one to pull the trigger? I don't think many of them would. Far too many would, and that's scary. But I don't know, Scott. It's a pivotal moment. Just as much as I reject these things that I was just mentioning on the left, I reject, as we just did a whole segment on rejecting Marjorie Taylor Greene and that line of thinking, and these other knuckleheads who are out there calling for a civil war and acting. Come on. I'm sorry, but most of these guys who think that they're going to grab their rifle and run out to a civil war would pass out by the time they got to the top of their driveway.
Well,
so they're not the tough guys that they think they are.
This
and
ain't
they're not
Fortnite.
Right. And they're not understanding what it is they are calling for.
No.
The Civil War in the United States was horrific. Hundreds of thousands of young men died. Families were ripped apart.
Pitted against one another.
Knock it off.
Brother versus brother.
You're stupid. Stop it.
The unfortunate part is I don't think our audience are the ones who are guilty of all that stuff, and they won't hear your
they're not.
Rant there. But you're absolutely right. I don't know where to go. But I tell you this is what I'm committed to. I'm committed to not isolating.
Yeah.
I'm committed to showing up and doing the work that I've been doing for the last decade. And I'm not going to give up on it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to, I will fight till my dying breath, not with weapons, but with my words and my intellect. Anybody who wants to call for a national divorce or a civil war, I will do everything I possibly can to prevent that. And that's my commitment. I don't see the people of the left as evil. And I know many of you do. And honestly, it's hard for me to say that you're not justified after what we've seen over the last week and some of the reactions of the people. But every human heart, and according to my faith, is capable of redemption.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is what I'm going to be keeping in mind. And that's why I didn't go seek out that guy's employer. And I will seek out future opportunities to talk with him again when we're not so close.
It's the Imago Dei. We are made in the image of God.
Yeah.
Republican, Democrat, white, black.
My Lord and
gay.
Savior gave his life for the shooter.
Yep.
My Lord and Savior gave his life for the guy who pulled the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
As much as he gave it for Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
And that is hard to keep in perspective in times like this. And I'm committed to trying. I'm not always great at it, but I'm committed to trying.
Scott, it just popped in my mind, and I won't take long here, but you remember the church in Charleston where a young, angry man came in and sat down with a group of African Americans in their church and had a Bible study with them and then got up and shot a bunch of them. South Carolina law, as you might remember, allows for victims' families to make a statement in the trial, and they did. And one by one, the members of that church stood up and said, I forgive you. It's hard. I'm angry. I'm hurt. But my scriptures and my God command me to forgive you, so I do. And that was such a demonstration, Scott, of, well, first of all, those people were probably Democrats, but such a demonstration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it's not a religious podcast, but that's what they did. And so there are models on the right and the left. There are bad examples on the right and the left. As I mentioned, at this moment in time, it's because Trump is in the White House and they're so angry at him. It's mostly on the left. But and you're right, Scott, we can't isolate. And I also would say that we have to, all of us, have to not be afraid to call out bad actors on our own side. Democrats are not gonna, the far left is not gonna listen to me about anything. But
and frankly, on our own side, we get labeled rhino. So
yeah,
the best we can do is model
the
behavior we want to see. That was heavy, but I think we needed to get that off our chests. Thank you for allowing us to treat our audience like a therapist. You guys are great listeners. Thank you for that. There was a poll that was released this week in the Georgia 2026 Senate race. It also measured John Ossoff's approval rating. It's done by Quantas Insights. And if you go and read the Quantas Insights write-up on this, it reads like something I would have written in a blog post at Peach Pundit. It really does. I'm not kidding. It's John Ossoff's approval numbers are not disastrous, but they're soft. 47% approve, 37% disapprove, and 16% cannot make up their minds. I'm telling you, I felt like when I read this, I wrote it. But that's interesting. He has a 47% approval rating as an incumbent, and it did head-to-head matchups. So which of the three candidates that we know of, and I'm going to limit you to Mike Collins, Buddy Carter, and Derek Dooley for U.S. Senate, do you think at this point have the best shot of beating John Ossoff?
Well, I glanced at the poll, but
okay. Well,
Mike Collins, right?
Mike Collins, right?
I would have guessed that anyway because he's had a pretty good rollout.
Right.
Here,
Yeah, and a very strong rollout. Kudos to his campaign team. But they have him heads up, not beating Ossoff, tied at 38 apiece.
Right.
Which would put them both in a runoff.
Yeah, right. Well, and honestly, Buddy Carter, what's the margin of error on this? Buddy Carter
is 4.
Okay, so he's within the margin of error as well.
So Buddy Carter at 37 versus John Ossoff 40. So Ossoff's numbers go up. Right. Carter's is 1 down. Yeah. So that's within the margin of error. Derek Dooley was outside the margin of error. He had 35% to 52% heads up against John Ossoff.
Yeah.
And we'll link to this poll in the blog post as well. So you can go, they have the crosstabs available. You can click on the link and look at all the nerdy data for all you folks out there.
The Republican primary, this is a little closer than I thought it'd be, honestly. Mike Collins at 25, Carter at 20, Dooley at 7, and 48%. Not sure.
Right. And these are the types of polls, these heads up polls. This is what Nathan Deal used to come from behind against Karen Handel back in the day when they were running for governor against one another. He kept showing up to events saying, I'm the one that has the best shot against Roy Barnes.
Yes.
So, but he wasn't doing great in the primary when he first started saying that. But so you have two different polls. You have the primary poll, which has Collins up by 5 points on Carter. But then you have these head-to-head matchups, and even then, Collins is pretty even.
Yeah.
But it also showed, the pollsters point out that Republicans haven't gotten their act together. They haven't settled on a champion, is the way that they worded it at Quantas Insights.
Yeah, 25 and 20, that's not a lot of, that was huge undecideds.
Right.
Half the voters practically are undecided at this moment in time.
But you looked at the candidate polling. Did you look at the issue polling that they included at all?
I have not.
So the economy was the number one issue. They wrote it like the economy stands above every other issue like an 800-pound gorilla. I'm telling you, I wrote this. A majority, 53%, call the cost of living and inflation the greatest problem facing the state. And the reason why I wanted to highlight this for you, and I wanted to say this when we were talking about the governor's races earlier and the Senate race now. This economy is soft.
Yeah.
This economy is real soft. And the reason this economy is real soft is because of tariffs. This economy would be in the stratosphere right now if not for tariffs.
Right.
But we have intentionally shot ourselves in the foot over this economic policy. There is no great realignment of manufacturing coming back. If the manufacturing does come back, everything will be made by robots. We're not employing Americans at that point.
Yep.
We're losing a great deal of sunk costs by having to move everything here and then requiring everybody to pay more to build the factories here. And the cost of goods have gone up. And they're continuing to go up because the tariffs continue to escalate as more time goes by, more of them kick in.
So in an odd way, Scott, that Supreme Court decision that's looming in November
could save the Republicans.
Exactly.
Because
could pull Trump's chestnuts out of the fire against his will.
Correct.
But could save them.
Correct. And that was a very colorful metaphor for you, Buzz. But I understood what you were saying. But let's just say that if things stay on the course they are on now, this is the danger of tying your entire identity on a campaign to the president, because a lot of time can go by between now and the primary date in May next year.
Yeah.
And if the economy takes a turn, let me just finish that point. If the economy takes a turn, then your candidacy your whole campaign identity is tied to a guy who has a negative approval rating as we speak.
Yep.
I don't know if you can win a general. You may be able to win the primary, but if you are not talking about more than just your allegiance to the president at this point, and that's your only identity. And I'm not saying that for specifically, Burt Jones, when he ran for LG, did this masterfully. He's like, yeah, I enjoy the support of the president, but let me tell you what I'm going to do. Like, that's a winning formula in my mind. So I'm not calling out any of the campaigns specifically, to be clear, but you cannot just run on your allegiance to Donald Trump. You're going to have to create some daylight, because that guy's not going to be president. If you're governor, your first term, he's out of office. He is going to term out. So you have 2 years beyond that. What's your vision beyond that? You're going to have to tell the people, especially since the economy is the number one issue. And it's really easy for Democrats to convince the voters this guy supports the president, so he must support tariffs, which is killing the port of Savannah.
Yep.
See what I'm saying? So I just think it's dangerous. I wanted to make that point.
Well, to buttress that point, Scott, in the poll, it says 20% of Republicans, 18.8% of Republicans want a candidate to act independently. 71% of independents want a candidate who acts independently as opposed to working closely with Trump. So there is, in the primary, you got to sidle up to him. But as you said, Scott, you got to be able to, when you get to a general election, you can't be a one-trick pony there and only be about, I'm going up there to support Trump, because that's not going to get you. Because overall, it's 49% of voters want somebody who acts independently of the president. So,
yeah, it might win you the primary, but we need Republicans to win the general too. That's what I'm saying. But we're going to do this last topic real quick because we're running a little bit long. And that was Pam Bondi has faced a chorus of boos. Booing is not hate speech, by the way.
Well earned booing.
When she said that she was going to prosecute people for hate speech because of Charlie Kirk's murder, and that if, I guess there was somebody walked into a print shop and said, would you print these posters of Charlie Kirk's face because we're doing a vigil for them? And they refused. The video went viral. And Pam Bondi's like, we could prosecute you for refusing to do that. The best take on this came from Eric Erickson, who pointed out that there's a baker in Colorado, we've been saying for ages, shouldn't be forced to do something they didn't want to do.
Yep.
Constitutional conservatives, gather round.
Yes.
Free speech protects the speech that you don't like.
Yep.
There is no such thing as hate speech, only free speech. And that means there's a whole lot of things that get said in this country that you're going to disagree with. They are not crimes. You cannot prosecute somebody for holding a view. And you certainly in America can't force somebody to do something they don't want to do if they have an objection to it according to their own conscience. Can we just get back to that, please?
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That's my take, Buzz. I'll let you have the last word there.
Well, I totally agree with you. There was also, Pam Bondi was way out of bounds. And I'm not going to go this far, but there were some who were saying this is disqualifying. She should resign. Because if your Attorney General of the United States of America doesn't understand how the First Amendment works, good God.
I keep saying this over and over again. Republicans are not always going to be in control. And if you set this precedent now, the left will come for us later.
Yep.
We have to defend the institutions and the protections that are granted to us under this Constitution, are protected by, no, not granted, because we understand here on the right where our rights actually come from, and they do not come from government. But if you don't defend the First Amendment now, our lack of defending it now will be used against us later.
Yep. And don't go to Starbucks and demand that Charlie Kirk's name be written on your little cup.
Jeez, oh, Pete.
Leave people alone.
What a Karen.
Yes.
That's
Libs of TikTok was passing that video around.
I'm sure. Clickbait, rage bait. Let's just keep America inflamed and angry. Poor Clerk had no idea what was coming. It was such a setup. I mean, just ridiculous. Don't be an asshole.
Right.
Yeah, put that on a t-shirt. You've been listening to Peach Fun of the Podcast. Peach Fun of the Podcast is Buzz Brockway, me, Scott Turner, and it's owned and published by me and provided to you by our people who rock. These are the people who reach into their pocket voluntarily. It's not mandatory, but they do it out of the kindness of their own hearts, and it helps us bring this podcast to you as well as the blog. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do it. So the people who rock are Sam Thomas, Jordan Reed, Shannon Ferguson, Jeff Cobble, Hank Burnham, Ryan Purvis, James Hall, Colin Martin, Tony West, and our friends at Americans for Prosperity, Robert Lee and our friends at Lee6 Media, Stuart Wilkinson, Ron Daniels, Mike Buchert, anonymous contributor who wants you to learn more about the Alzheimer's Association, Bo Brennan, Ryan Graham, John Vestal, Reed Powell, Brett Harrell, Justin Wright, Bethany Ballard, Bill Werkheiser, Sergio Ortega. It's getting so long, I have to take a breath. Eric Johnson, Kenyatta Mitchell, and Ken Pullen. Thank you all. If you want to join them, you head on over to patreon.com/peachpundit. Remember, you can sign up by leaving a comment on YouTube, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a comment, and you can join Lot and Sack in getting a free t-shirt or maybe a hat or whatever it is I feel like giving away that month. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next time.
Go Jackets.